chess and listening to creepypasta as well, so be ready.
We announce today that, after many tests and trials, we have found, without a doubt, that faster than light travel is possible. It won't be an easy thing for people to accept, not after the dozens of years and billions of dollars developing the technology. It was a unanimous decision. I only wish we had reached it sooner. When the first ship disappeared, we pressed forward. Everyone knew there would be setbacks and sacrifices on this journey. The second ship reappeared after 5 seconds and only about a mile from where it launched. When the pilot came out, silent and unresponsive, some of the board members expressed concern. When he hung himself the next day from a noose made of his bed sheets, there was a call to cease manned flights entirely, but the majority prevailed and a third flight was scheduled. The third and final ship reappeared in almost exactly the place it left, undamaged but with no pilot. According to the engineers, the hatch had remained shut for the entire flight, and there was not a single breach in the hull. However, unlike the previous ship, the internal cameras had remained functional, and at the following board meeting, we reviewed the footage. It was a short meeting. The footage has been deleted. Destroying all of our research and prototypes will take time, but if all goes to plan, then, in a few years, all traces of our work on FDL travel will be gone. No, people aren't going to take this announcement well. Some people will, undoubtedly, think we're lying, covering something up. Those people will be right. But they'll think our reasons are selfish, keeping the technology for ourselves or suppressing it to keep the population contained. No one will guess that we were trying to save mankind, to protect it. The human race should be content with Earth, with our solar system. They have to be. We weren't meant to go any further. When I was in 6th grade, I remember I had this beautiful teacher with very long, dark hair and big, mesmerizing brown eyes. While she was very kind, she was also very strange. I remember noticing that, no matter what the weather, she was always wearing long-sleeved shirts, and when she wasn't, she had a lot of thick bracelets that covered her wrists. She also had the tendency to act like she was watching her back, or something along those lines. Well, one day, all of the children in class had finished our work. When this happened, we were allowed to talk and play games. I remember that, in the midst of this, the conversation turned quickly to kidnapping and murdering, as a kid was talking about something tragic that had just happened on his family, but he meant no harm. I wasn't engaged in the conversation, but rather, I was watching my teacher, whose face had gone pure white, and who was now tugging profusely at the sleeves of her long-sleeved shirt, as she often did when she was nervous. After class, I approached my teacher, who was still looking very much uncomfortable, and asked if she was okay. She gave me a confused look, as though she didn't actually expect me to be paying attention to her. Then, she asked me 2 questions. The first was, "Can I tell you a scary story?" Now, at the time, I was very into anything that was creepy or strange, so I said yes without any hesitation. Her next question was one that kind of baffled me. She then asked, "Do you know who Ted Bundy was?"
Ooh.
I had no idea, and so I said no.
Takes a bad turn.
She looked down at her hands, which were now folded on a desk, and she began to twiddle her thumbs. What she told me next is probably still the most horrifying story I have heard to this day. In her youth, my teacher often wandered the streets alone at night. She thought, since she always visited crowded areas, she didn't think it was anything to worry about. One night, she was proven very wrong. As she was window shopping one night, a man walked up to her, claiming to be a police officer, and made up a story about her car being towed or something along those lines, and he would take it to her. My teacher was very concerned about the state of her car, so she followed him. He led her into a back alleyway where she didn't see a car, but rather somebody else's. At this point, she says that red flags started going up in her mind, so she did what any normal person would do, and she asked to see his badge. The man smiled and flashed the badge in her direction, and immediately my teacher felt safer. Then they began to approach the car. My teacher, once again, demanded to see the badge a little closer, and that's when the supposed officer put his hands over her mouth and threw her into the back seat of his car. She tried to scream, but he kept his hand over her mouth. Then he reached for something with his free hand. It was a pair of handcuffs, which he used to handcuff her hands behind her back. She begged and pleaded with him, to no avail. Fortunately for her, before anything really bad could happen, she somehow managed to escape. How exactly she isn't even sure, but as soon as she got out of the car, she took off yelling and screaming and did not look back. A few months later, she heard of a man that had been apprehended for kidnapping and murdering women in quite a few states by the name of Theodore Bundy. When his picture flashes on a TV screen, that's when she said she broke down. It was the same man that had tried to abduct her. At the end of her story, she rolled up her sleeves of her shirt. There were very clearly circular scars from where the handcuffs had clearly broken skin on her wrists. What she said to me next will stick with me until the day I die. She said, "Strangers will tell you a lot of things. They will say they know your parents or your friends. They may say they are hurt or need some help. But do not go to them unless you personally know them. Call your parents or another adult that you know. Be very wary of strangers. They will lie to you so that they can hurt you." I left that class a little shaken and had no idea what to think. Sometimes I still don't. I have used this story countless times to warn family members or other children of the dangers of talking to people you do not know. I wish I could see her again and see how she was doing, but I have no way of getting a hold of her now. As far as I know, she is retired and living happily. But I would like to know for myself.
What does dude $10 for shirt Kappa mean? What does that
In
mean?
Berlin, after World War II, money was short, supplies were tight, and it seemed like everyone was hungry. At that time, people were telling the tale of a young woman who saw a blind man picking his way through a crowd. The two started to talk. The man asked her for a favour. Could she deliver the letter to the address on the envelope? Well, it was on her way home, so she agreed.
Man.
She started out to deliver the message when she turned around to see if there was anything else the blind man needed. But she spotted him, hurrying through the crowd without his smoked glasses or white cane. She was, naturally, suspicious, so she went to the police. When the police paid a visit to the address on the envelope, they made a gruesome discovery. 3 butchers had been harvesting human flesh and selling it to starving people. And what was in the envelope the man gave to the woman? A note, simply saying, "This is the last one I am sending you today." I was on the second floor of our house playing PS2 with 4 of my relatives, ranging from 2 to 7 years old, when suddenly they heard a voice of my aunt saying that she's home and wanted them to come down. I was so busy with the game, so I did not mind them since they are familiar with the stairs. All of them hurried down the stairs just to find out that nobody was there. They were all shocked. I was very worried that something bad had happened to my aunt at the time. Incidents of bombing in our location is very often. It came to my mind that she must be probably a victim and just wanted to see her beloved nieces for the last time. Luckily, my aunt arrived an hour later riding a cab and was totally fine. I told her the story and she said she had experienced the same thing at our house. At around 4 or 5 a.m, she was about to use the bathroom when she saw my sister go into the bathroom before her. She heard running water and singing, which is the hobby of my sister when using the bathroom. She waited for 30 minutes when suddenly the running water stopped and she thought that my sister was done. But she was shocked to find out that nobody was using the bathroom. She then remembered that my sister asked her permission last night that she would not go home because she was invited to visit the province of her boyfriend, and she left immediately after my aunt agreed. Again, my sister was fine. We are still living in the same house, but we are no longer afraid because we believe that the ghost couldn't hurt us anyway. We just think that the ghost is friendly and just wants to have fun with people. That is why we call the ghost the Mimic Ghost.
I like that name. It's a good name for a ghost. It's a really good name.
Once, there was a girl about 7 years old. She lived with her parents in a small house which was in the middle of a deserted moor. They were somewhat poor and got this house a few years ago for not much money. The girl's name was Marissa, and she knew every inch of the house. One night, Marissa went into the kitchen, hugging her doll tightly, to find her parents talking very seriously. When the girl walked in, she noticed something through the window which was over the sink. Over the hill, about 5 yards away, a man with craggy clothes and a pale face with black hair was staggering over towards the house. Marissa caught a few words in the conversation: killer and 911. As the parents noticed their daughter, they told her, "Go to bed, honey, it's nothing." So Marissa went to her room, but she couldn't fall asleep. She knew that her family was in trouble, that man wasn't a good sign. Suddenly, a door outside her room slammed open. She heard a shriek and a loud thump. Footsteps were heading towards her room. She let out a scream and ran over to close the door and lock it. She went over to a closet. She had to hide. The family had a secret. In Marissa's closet, there was a secret passage in a loose stone which led to the cellar, which would help them if they ever needed to hide. She heard a loud bang, bang on the door. She pulled out the stone and looked at her doll in the beady, deep blue eyes. She dropped the doll in first into the cellar. The door burst open. A man came in with a knife, dripping with blood. Marissa was about to get into the cellar, but before she could move, she was killed, and the stone fell back into the floor. About 500 years later, another family moved in. They had a girl who was 12 years old, and she was very curious. One night, the girl, whose name was Nicole, couldn't fall asleep,
Uh-oh.
so she put her head under the
His
covers
precious little
and
bishop
closed her eyes
here.
tight. She
His
thought
precious
it was
little
her
bishop
imagination,
here.
but she heard a faint, desperate cry. "Help me! Help me!" She opened her eyes. "Help me! Help me!" It kept getting louder. She took the covers off. "Help me! Help me!" Now she knew it wasn't her imagination. She got out of bed and made out that it was coming from the closet. "Help me! Help me!" She walked over to the closet door and flung it open. The noise seemed to ring in her ears like a fire alarm. A single stone in the floor was shaking violently. She picked it up, and as soon as she took it out of the floor, the voice stopped. A gust of wind came out of the hole in the floor. She looked into it and gasped. There was a pair of eyes, blue as the sky, staring straight at her. She climbed down the ladder and picked up a doll.
Don't mind.
Its eyes were beautiful, but it looked to be hundreds of years old, all dusty, and the colours were faded. Suddenly, a piercing scream came from the doll, and it rattled violently in her hands. She shrieked, ran upstairs, and told her parents. The family moved out almost immediately. Today, the house is being used as a museum. It displays the doll, and they say if you listen closely on the day Marissa died, you can hear it from the doll. "Help me. Help me."
Help me. Help me. Oh God. Is that it? Yeah. Looks fine. Okay. I'll click the link and click the link. Gotta click the link. Gotta click the link. Gotta click the link. Click the
I had always loved horror movies. In my younger days, I may not have realised it, but I was a glutton for the terror that films would instill in me. I subconsciously loved how they kept me up at night. Small, fearful eyes scanning my bedroom shadows for whatever sort of creature may be calling the darkness its home. It was to the point where I would wake up in the early hours of the morning, around 1 a.m. or so, to sneak into the living room and watch the late night screamers that would air. Often, I would get caught by my mother or father about half an hour into my shenanigans, seated on the couch and wrapped up in my blankie, while clutching a teddy bear with eyes fixated on the television screen. I would be sent to bed immediately, told that my punishment would come in the morning. It never did. My parents, too tired at the time to actually remember apprehending me. On a rare occasion, though, I'd managed to make it all the way through the film, from the time I'd slipped into the couch to the moment the credits rolled. At that moment, the trudge back to my bedroom was a mad dash of fright, trying to evade any and all monsters or bugaboos that, in my impressionable mind, would grab me and take me away. I was always successful in the return trip. It made me feel like Indiana Jones.
Okay.
I don't love horror movies anymore. Not after what happened. I was in college when the event occurred. While most people associate university with wild parties, copious amounts of alcohol, and finding as many people to have anonymous sex with, my version of the experience was more tame by those standards. The evenings not spent furiously poring over my projects and classwork was spent with my one true love, my Netflix account. From the moment my last class of the day ended, I was wrapped in the sweet embrace the internet had waiting for me. I would return to my dorm, slip into my bedroom and into something more comfortable, and spend until about 4 in the morning watching whatever horrors the streaming site had available to me. For the price of $7.99 a month, it was the best and most cheap addiction I'd ever encountered. The people I chose to interact with when I wasn't glued to my laptop were often of the same ilk that I was. Individuals who were just as obsessive over movies. We loved to be scared, and we often spoke of it. We compared reviews, discussed theories, and often got together to partake in these pieces of nightmare fuel, usually once a week on Saturday in a grand marathon session that was catered by the local pizza place, and a large snack trip beforehand to prepare for when we were sick of the smell of grease and cheese. Many of us were members of a horror enthusiast forum to meet and talk with more people who shared our twisted ideas of entertainment. I've since removed myself completely from that site. Due to the vast duration of time that I'd been with my Netflix account, I'd practically exhausted their selection of movies to stream that were of my tastes. I'd watch the classics, the cult favourites, the flops, the silents, the screamers, the spookers, the slashers, the foreign. Short of paying extra for a DVD plan, my partner in crime was becoming repetitive. I'd even resorted to watching the one-stars, the films that were too terrible to even consider horror, but still somehow made the list. Filled with poor crafted CG effects that were more terrifying than the monsters they were trying to scare me with. I lamented this to my forum mates, complaining of the lack of fresh choices upon the site that filled my browser history. Many of my friends from school were having the same problems, and were voicing their woes within the same thread that I had begun. Looking back on it, I realise now that this was the worst mistake I could have made. Had I not started that thread, some of us might still remain among the living, finding new ways to garner our thrills. Scream Queen 69, her username from the forum, as I won't refer to anyone by their true name to protect families, had approached us at the meeting grounds the following day. Our usual location of gathering was behind a campus building, an area of concrete that sloped downwards to a door that, we all assumed, led to the art department basement. The top of the wall that enclosed our cold stone hill, blocked off by a fence so none could accidentally fall and injure themselves. As our group sat and talked, SQ arrived, looking a little worse for wear. There were dark circles under her eyes, looking tired, and her face was pale. She often looked so bright and sun-kissed, full of energy. She had said that shortly after she posted on the forums the night before, she'd been contacted by another member asking if she wanted to watch something that, as she spoke and gave air quotes with her fingers, would change the genre for her forever, and then proceeded to send her a link to the obscure site she'd never heard of before. Tweenwolf rolled his eyes, suggesting that they were only trying to suggest a film for her to watch and that she was being crazy for ignoring them. I was growing concerned. However, as she recounted that, though she originally ignored the person, they sent her messages constantly afterwards. They started out mild enough, along the lines of, "Did you watch it yet?" And, "What did you think?" And as the night went on, they got more violent. SQ showed me the chat history, and towards the end, it seemed that her chat partner, named Behind You, was getting more and more agitated. The messages were becoming desperate. "Did you click the link yet? You should click the link. You won't regret it. Click the link. Click the damn link already. Click the link. Click the link. Click the link. Click the link. Click the link." click the link,
So
click the link, click the link, click the link, click. It was at that point that I grew incredibly concerned for my friend. No one else had received these messages, only her. My only advice to her was to ignore it and perhaps stay off the site for a few days. If this person didn't see her online, perhaps they would lose interest and back off. It wasn't the case, however, as SQ would come to us for the next couple of days, looking more and more haggard, saying that she couldn't rest at night. Behind You was still messaging her, and at this point, it was just a repeat of the original link, pasted over and over and over. She was starting to get emails sent to a school email account. She didn't know how they'd gotten it. Her email address wasn't listed on the forum, and it wasn't even the same one she'd registered to the site with. The sender would be blank, the subject line empty, and the message was always the same. Click the link. Her inbox was flooded with at least 100 emails by the time she returned from classes, all the same. And the text, an unknown number of all zeros, at all hours of the day. Click the link. Even when her phone was on silent, the sound would still ring. It was turned off and it would ring. She would remove the battery completely and still be startled by the noise of a text tone. She had submerged the phone in water to try and damage it and get rid of the noises. Still, it rang. She had put it into the microwave and turned it on for 5 minutes, knowing that if the appliance was broke, she would have to pay for a replacement, seeing as the appliance was provided by the dorm building. Even burnt and melted in places, the battery removed and fried. It rang. It was getting to the point where SQ was growing more and more frazzled, each and every cell phone going off around her, causing her to shriek. By the 5th day, she hadn't shown up to lunch. Most of us assumed she was just trying to catch up on sleep from the incident keeping her up at night. We didn't realise she had died until 2 days later, when her roommate complained about the smell coming from her room. The police blocked off the dorm room, and her roommate was moved out to live with someone else in the building. They ruled it as a suicide, claiming that SQ had overdosed on sleeping pills. She had been found slumped over her desk in front of a laptop, with a forum pulled up on a browser. I had managed to worm my way into her room a few days after cleanup had ended. Her family lived on the other side of the country, and